Have you ever wondered why a certain brand might pop up right on top when you search for something on your favorite e-commerce website? How is it that some platforms manage to have such big discounts on some products? Why is it that some launches take place online way before they've hit the market? Well, you're clearly not alone. The Competition Commission of India's investigation wing, headed by Director General Anshuman Patnaik, has submitted an exhaustive report on the alleged antitrust activities of Amazon and Walmart backed Flipkart. These include extending preferential treatment to select sellers, prioritizing certain listings, and even steeply discounting products which they have concluded is hurting other companies. Now, bear in mind that these are findings that are not out in the public yet, but have been reported on pretty extensively. But what exactly has the DG said in its report? How much of an impact will this have on large e-commerce giants? Will this go on to set a precedent for other players in, say, the quick commerce space? Are large platforms truly hurting the smaller players? What happens next in the CCI Amazon Flipkart saga? To find out all this and more, we have with us antitrust lawyer Gautam Shahi and Professor Vishwanath Pingali to decode what this means for e-commerce in India. It's Thursday, September 19th. I'm your host, Diya Rekhi, and you are listening to Behind CCI's Serious Allegations Against Amazon and Flipkart, only on the Morning Brief from the Economic Times. To bring you up to speed, all this started in 2020 when a case was filed by the Delhi Vyapar Mahasangh, where it was alleged that the e-commerce platform preferred certain sellers over others. On 13th January 2020, the CCI passed an order to investigate both Flipkart and Amazon for anti-competitive practices. The CCI asked the DG to investigate the issue, but before that could happen, there was a series of back and forth where the e-commerce giants challenged the CCI's verdict. This went all the way up to the Supreme Court level, but on August 9, 2021, the Supreme Court ruled in the favor of the CCI and permitted them to continue with their probe. Cut to September 2024, and you have the DG's report on Amazon having allegedly found that the Indian units of 5 companies, that is Samsung, Xiaomi, Motorola, Realme, and OnePlus, were involved in the practice of exclusive phone launches on Amazon. Similarly, the DG has allegedly found that Samsung, Motorola, Vivo, Lenovo, Xiaomi, and Realme had a similar setup with Flipkart. And this is not all. The DG has flagged several other practices that we'll delve deeper into. And for that, who better than competition lawyer Gautam Shahi, who gives us an update on the latest findings while also schooling us on some basics of competition law. He sheds light on why this could be a landmark verdict and how the CCI's take on this can shape regulations to come. Listen in. Thank you so much, Gautam, for joining us on the Morning Brief. It's a pleasure to have you. Just wanted to start off with asking you a little bit about what has really come out in the open right now when it comes to these CCI findings, right? Nothing has come out officially, of course, but from what we have seen and heard, what are some things that got your attention and something that you can tell our listeners about?
Of course, officially the report is not out. Now, what has come to light is a couple of conduct which is very specific to digital markets. One is an exclusive agreement between mobile phone manufacturers and the online websites, marketplaces like Amazon and Flipkart, where a particular mobile brand or particular mobile will have an agreement with the website that we will launch a particular model only through your channel. So, if as a consumer I want to buy a particular model of a particular mobile, I'll have to go to one specific website, and only at that website can I buy it. That's one. Other is the preferential treatment. That is, you give a preferential result, or you prefer your own brands or the brands with which you have an agreement as an online website. So whenever a consumer is looking for a search result, you ensure that those brands come at the top of the search results whenever a person or a consumer, a potential consumer, is looking for a mobile. Those kind of things happen. Next is deep discounts, which have been a global concern, wherein it has been reported that Amazon and Flipkart have been allegedly allowing these particular preferred sellers to give higher discounts based on the foreign investment that Amazon and Flipkart were getting. These are the major conduct that we are looking at now.
If you can then give our listeners an idea of how the DG has gone ahead and even defined what a relevant market is. Are these platforms in violation of getting that whole aspect of competition law and that bit in?
The law says a relevant market has two elements. One is a relevant product market and a relevant geographic market. The product market is defined as a set of substitutable products from a consumer perspective. So, as a consumer, if I consider tea as a substitute for coffee, then tea and coffee are part of the same market. Relevant geographic market is a geographic territory where the conditions of competitions are similar or identical. In this scenario, when we're looking at digital markets, of course, we look at the entire territory of India as the relevant geographic market. As far as the product market goes, that's where things get a little debatable. Do I look at the entire online market, something like an Amazon or Flipkart, as a single market? So you may see Amazon and a Flipkart are competing with each other. Or do I slice it further and say, look, no, these are all different segments? So a lot depends on how the relevant product market is defined in this matter. DG, of course, from what we understand from the reports, has concluded or at least defined the market in a manner where he has said that, look, Amazon and Flipkart seems to be dominant in certain markets. They also seem to have certain market power, because we are looking at, from the reports, we see there are two different kind of potential violations. One is the violation of course, abuse of dominance. So DG must have concluded based on a particular definition of relevant market, wherein Amazon and Flipkart are dominant. The other section that we look at is the potential violation of Section 3.1 read with Section 3.4, that is the restriction on vertical restraints. So if there is an agreement, like the exclusive agreement between Amazon and a seller, or a Flipkart and a seller, by which other retailers, online or offline, are being excluded, then that's what we call is a vertical restraint that is being imposed. These kind of agreements can only be held to be violative of the law if they cause appreciable adverse effect on competition. So we can assume, based on the reports, that the DG has concluded, one, that these players have sufficient market power to have violated Section 3.4, that is, their vertical restraints are such that they have caused appreciable adverse effect on competition. Second, that they are dominant in certain markets and they have indulged in conduct which are abusive in nature. Now, what will be the conclusion of all this is subjective. Like I said, relevant market is not a very fixed concept. A lot of debate will, of course, take place around it. How DG has defined it will, of course, be questioned by the councils for both Amazon and Flipkart. And we'll have to see how CCI takes a call, because this will be a landmark order. And you'll have some of the best legal minds discussing this out there. The conduct that they have talked about, that is deep discounts, exclusivity, and preferential treatment. These are conducts which are recognized as anti-competitive. In some cases, they are prima facie violative of the law. In certain cases, you have to show that there is an appreciable adverse effect on competition as a result of those agreements. So the conduct that we see reported in news, yes, they are violative of the law. Whether Amazon and Flipkart have actually indulged in those conduct, and whether those conduct have had a negative effect on competition in India, is something which has to be seen. Because please note, it's not like there's a line and then you have crossed it. These are debatable issues. I'm sure counsels and economists for both Amazon and Flipkart will tell you there are efficiency gains which may be arising from what the conduct that they have indulged in. And of course, the DG's report is there, which has a counter argument to it, which says, look, there is a appreciable adverse effect on competition and there is a consumer harm involved. Hence, there is a violation of the law. All these factors will have to be discussed and debated before CCI comes to a conclusion.
We have seen the CCI mirroring the EU in a lot of competition cases earlier, especially
Yes.
recently. Do we see that trend going forward as well?
So ex ante regulations are when you try and regulate the conduct of the players in the market before they even violate the law. And post facto regulations is once the law has been violated, where the conduct has already taken place, and then you assess whether there is a violation of law and whether you want to reprimand or punish the player who has violated the law. In India and across the world, till recently at least, the trend or the practice was that once the conduct takes place and if somebody raises an issue about it, then the authorities will jump into it, look into the matter, and see whether the law has been violated or not. However, recently in Europe, there will be new laws established where in the digital markets, ex ante regulations can be imposed. The regulator can say, look, here are these major players in these segments, and I will tell them how to behave in the market. So even before
Right.
they violate the law, you try and do a kind of course correction. But as far as whether there will be a light touch or where there will be or strong regulatory interventions, I don't think we need to go one single way. The digital market in India is no longer a nascent market. You know, in nascent market, any kind of regulatory intervention is generally frowned upon. However, the digital markets in India are young enough that any regulatory intervention will have a long-term impact on both the Indian market and global market. So we need to be careful. Now, whether there's a requirement of soft touch or whether there is a requirement of a strong intervention can be decided on a case-to-case basis.
But what about this whole movement that we are seeing globally to keep the large players in check? We are seeing that with Google. We are seeing that now with Amazon and Flipkart and so on. How important is that aspect? And do you see regulators' grip tightening when it comes to large players, especially?
We of course need to regulate these large players, no doubt about it. But that should be once a conduct takes place, and if you feel that conduct is wrong, you can intervene, you can stop that conduct from taking place, or if there's a monetary penalty to be imposed or some corrective measure to be taken, you can do all that. But as regulators, you can't tell a player how to compete in his market. That player is an expert about his own market, he knows how to grow. Regulator should not substitute his own wisdom for that particular player's wisdom. Yes, if there is an effect once a conduct takes place and you notice that there is an adverse effect on the market that is taking place, by all means intervene, take corrective measures. That is required and should be done because we have seen that some of the players have become very big, and as a result, other players are finding it difficult to grow in the same markets.
And if I were to ask you, what is the possible outcome that you are expecting when it comes to how Amazon and Flipkart will take to this? What would you say? What are their likely arguments? What is their plan of action?
So, like I said, this is going to be a landmark order. Okay, this is a precedent which will be established for similar issues in future. See, because the issues like exclusive agreements with respect to particular brands through an online sales channel, the element about deep discounts, these are issues which have not been taken up by the Competition Commission of India till now. Even when you read literature globally, while we talk about deep discounts, you don't really find judgments on this. There are theories that look, deep discounts are dangerous for the markets and they may be happening, and there's some economic data around it. There's some studies around it, but you don't find that the authorities have taken a call on this. So there is a very limited precedent which is globally well established. And now when we come to Indian market, there's hardly any precedent on this.
Now that we have a lawyer's perspective, I also wanted to give you a perspective from someone who has worked with these platforms and can bring in a view that is slightly different from what the DG has gone with. Why, you ask? Well, listen in to Professor Vishwanath Pingali as he explains how he believes these platforms have actually helped smaller players. Professor, I just wanted to start by asking you what your views are on the DG's allegations when it comes to Amazon and Flipkart about preferential listing or deep discounts or even things like preferred sellers. Are these in violation of the competition law in India?
So, Dia, let me start out with a small disclaimer. And I think it's only fair that I let the viewers know upfront itself as to what the conflicts of interest I have are. I routinely consult with the big platforms. So therefore, please keep that in mind when you're interpreting my answers. And I hope that doesn't disqualify me from providing my opinions to people. But I think it's still important that I let everybody that is listening to this know the fact that I do consult for these big platforms here and there. So having said that, let's tackle the problem of deep discounts, where technology is fast evolving. Certain set of products become obsolete very fast. So therefore, you have no choice but to get rid of them to fill your inventory with the latest equipment that is out there. So for instance, Samsung comes up with a latest phone right now. Whatever I hold in stock is gone. That's one part I want you to keep in mind. The second thing about deep discounts that you have to understand is that many of these platforms act as intermediaries between a buyer and a seller. So therefore, the deep discount is not a part of the platform strategy more often than not. I'm not saying it's not all the time. Many times it may not be the platform strategy. It might be the seller strategy in order to get rid of their inventory or maybe establish their presence a little more strongly in the market, etc., etc. So therefore, deep discounts per se, I don't always classify as anti-competitive. It depends on the reason why those deep discounts are being offered. You also have deep discounts that work out in automobile sector come the month of December to make place for the new models that they're planning to launch. Now, in terms of selecting vendors, this is where I was just wondering, is it even possibly a business strategy that even makes sense? I think that's a question that I would like to ask. And I think it bothers me, right? I mean, in the following sense. Is it possible that I'm going to attract competition for myself by excluding a certain set of sellers completely? I mean, there are close to a few million sellers that I'm working with. So I'm not really sure as to what this preferential seller business is all about. Because if, let's say, systematically certain set of sellers are being excluded to participate in the market, one, is it feasible to do? Second, am I not, inviting competition upon myself in more than one sense of the word? So therefore, this is something that I want to be cognizant of when they're talking about these two things.
If I could just take that a step ahead, right, and ask you about preferential listing. I mean, a certain company showing up as the first option when you type in a certain keyword. How does that work, and would that be considered anti competitive?
People use platforms for discovery, people use platforms for logistics. Let's be clear on that. So therefore, if at all something is coming up on the top of the list for everything, I would actually assume that it is possible that their keyword selection on how they're listing their particular product is in line with the search terms that the searcher is using, right? I mean, if my search engine optimization is working spot on, you would actually see these kinds of behavior coming out, right? Yeah, I mean, so that's the point that I'm trying to make simply that, are you punishing me for efficiency? I mean, so that's a question that I would probably end up having. I don't know the answer one way or the other. That's what we need to investigate. So therefore, that's the only point that we need to consider before we pass a final judgment one way or the other.
You've done extensive research on platforms and their impact on small businesses, right? When there are statements that are made by regulators such as the CCI talking about how large platforms are sort of cutting out the smaller businesses, how do you respond to that? What does your research show?
So I have a paper that's coming out. I mean, that's already come out, and we talk about small businesses and digital platforms. There are a few things that we find which are very, very important. The first thing is that the firms that use digital technology tend to operate in a greater number of geographies than the firms that use traditional methods of marketing and logistics, right? I mean, let's ask ourselves a but for world, right? Where these platforms don't exist. What does a small, business prefer? Does it prefer the world where platforms exist, or does it prefer a world where platforms don't exist? I'm absolutely certain that they prefer the world where the platforms exist. So platforms do help small businesses on multiple ways. The first way in which they help is discovery. A traditional advertisement costs a bomb. Digital advertisement is always on a piecemeal basis. So therefore, my costs of advertisement are much lower. That's the first one. The second way in which it helps, most oft overlooked, issue in this entire market is that they have built credibility for small businesses in the following sense. You order something from me, and I actually don't provide it to you. Instead, I give you something else. You actually can go to the platform and complain the fact that I have refused to comply with the contract that you and I have had. Now, the point is the platform will ensure that you get your redressal sooner than later. And that's the biggest power. So therefore, that allows you to trust me. That allows me to trust you that you're going to transfer money to me in a reasonable time frame. So therefore, the transaction happens between people who hardly see each other, who hardly are even connected with each other and are separated from each other by thousands of kilometers. So to me, these are the two massive aspects of what a platform brings to the small businesses. I have an evidence. We show very clearly using our data analytical models that we actually worked on to show that small businesses actually thrive a lot more in the presence of platforms than they are. There's another paper that I'm working on. When food delivery platforms enter this area, small restaurants actually improve their presence in that particular region. So therefore, I don't definitely agree with the statement that platforms hurt small businesses at all.
Based on your work, what is the kind of impact that these platforms have had on smaller businesses? Could you talk about something that really stuck with you?
There are two things that I found interesting. I said the first one that every additional platform that the small business is a part of, and when I say small business, I'm really talking about businesses which are less than 5 crores. You see the expansion, geographical expansion being that much more high. When you think about exports, today we know on record there are firms whose turnover is less than 1 crore rupees a year, and they're thinking of exporting. To me, that's one interesting fact. The second interesting fact is that it's not the big platforms that you know that are doing the business only. You see that a typical small business relies on the big guys, Metas, Facebooks, Googles, Amazons, Flipkarts of the world. They also rely on nascent upcoming platforms. Again, to give you a few names, Misho comes up a lot more. You also see names like MX Takatak. These are the platforms that we saw in our survey of close to 1,500 small businesses. And we went deep into 30, 40 of them where we interviewed them using a very semi-structured questionnaire. I mean, I see that these niche platforms are actually picking a lot of traction in the world today. And second is exporting is no longer an elite phenomenon. Exporting happens even among the small players. And again, all of them because of the digital presence that you're talking about.
Right now, we're talking only about e commerce, but do you see similar scrutiny coming for other players like those in the quick commerce space or food delivery space? Because they might also have certain features that, say, an Amazon or Flipkart use, where a certain name of a product or name of a restaurant comes up top. How do you see that going?
I definitely do have a problem there with the word deep discount. I mean, to be putting it very bluntly, who are you to tell me how much profit I should have? Bluntly put. Of course, the competition law forces you not to do predatory pricing and for rightful reasons. So therefore, the first thing is you need to show that deep discount is predatory pricing and deep discount is not just me working with lower profits. The second part of it that I want you to also think through a little bit with me is that in terms of the quick commerce that's coming out and all that stuff, these are still emerging businesses. I don't think the quick commerce has yet established itself as a business model. They're showing some signs of profitability, but that's where it stops. They work on the principle of network effects. The more number of people join the platform, more number of people want to join the platform. So that's how the platforms typically scale in this particular case. So the initial trigger becomes an extremely important thing, especially because the initial trigger is to move away from traditional businesses to these quick commerce platforms. So therefore, would you change your style just because something new is available? The answer is not. The new has to be better. So therefore, the initial trigger of a price discount maybe being a catch probably is working out in some of these businesses. Many people actually said at one point in time that some of these cab apps is also deep discount. In fact, it was predatory pricing because it was operating less than the cost. But the point is that this works under the premise that in the long run, I'm going to kill my competition away and then increase the prices obscene levels that common person will suffer a lot more. But the question is that even possible in a country like India, right? I mean, if let's say tomorrow the quick commerce firms give you deep discount currently, but few days later, when all the competition is dead, they increase the rates. trust me, the first competition that they're going to face is from the informal market. The chotu that exists in pretty much every mohalla in India will probably start asking for the share of business that Zomato and Swiggy are likely to have, or for that matter, the quick commerce firms are likely to have. So therefore, the question of you being able to exploit your ability to provide deep discount today with premium pricing few days later, that itself is a questionable assumption, because the informal economy in India is probably the biggest competition any of these platforms face.
It will be interesting to see the kind of stance that the CCI takes on the DG report. As we await that, one thing is certain. This could be a landmark verdict that could have ripple effects in multiple other sectors and companies. As India moves to an increasingly digitized existence where everything from cabs to cabbage is available on an app, the CCI will have to take a call on how much it wants to regulate the digital space. It's staring at a crossroads that can shape the future of the digital economy in a way that can be monumental. And we're here to trace that journey every step of the way. Thank you, Gautam and Vishwanath. It's Thursday, September 19th. I'm your host, Diya Rekhi, and you were listening to Behind CCI's Serious Allegations Against Amazon and Flipkart, only on the Morning Brief from the Economic Times. Queries sent to Amazon and Flipkart seeking comment remained unanswered as of recording time on Wednesday. This episode was produced by Neil Ghai and sound designed by Rajas Nayak, executive producers Anirban Chaudhary and Arijit Barman. A new episode of The Morning Brief drops every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday on a listening platform of your choice. Have a good week ahead.